Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 6 here of the Fourth String Sports Podcast. Your host, Brady, co-host Mitch here. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Today, we're going to break down the Buffalo Bills. The last episode, we broke down the Baltimore Ravens. We're going each team here, just alphabetical order, going over what they did last season, some of their off-season pickups and losses, who they drafted, and what we think they're going to do next season. Last week we broke down the Ravens. I think we both had them going 13-3. Today we're going to break down another AFC playoff team, and it's the Buffalo Bills. And they're an enigma of an organization and a team right now. And I'm very interested to kind of hear Mitch's opinions on this. But feel free, any Buffalo fans, any Ravens fans from last week. We've also broken down the Cardinals and the Falcons so far. Let us know what your thoughts are. Go back, watch all the videos. We also did 2 videos where we broke down the NFL schedule. Let us know what you think. Comments, suggestions, hate mail, send it all to us. We're on Gmail. It's a fourthstringsp@gmail.com. That's FOURTH stringsp@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Let's just hop into it. The Buffalo Bills, making their second playoff appearance in 3 years in the Sean McDermott era, went 10-6 last season, lost in the wild card in overtime at Houston, 22-19. I guess before we even hop into it, I kind of posed this question when we talked about the Falcons, and I'm going to pose it again. To me, there's kind of 5 categories that most, if not every NFL team falls into, and it's in need of a rebuild, in need of a reload, 500 team, playoff caliber, and Super Bowl caliber. So where of those 5 categories would you put this Buffalo team
in? As of today, I think they still are playoff caliber because, the defense is definitely playoff championship caliber, in my opinion. And then when it comes to the offense, I think the jury is still out on Josh Allen, whether that he's hit his ceiling or if he can still ascend.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that if he keeps ascending, he can definitely put the Bills into the Super Bowl conversation. But until we see this year what he does, then I think their ceiling right now is playoff caliber.
Yeah, I agree. I think Josh Allen is and has to be the crux of the Bills here because I think we kind of saw a similar thing in Chicago with Mitch Trubisky, which is Mitch Trubisky had a really good season when the Bears went 12-4, but a large part of that was because of how good the Bears defense was. Obviously, I don't think the Buffalo defense is at the level that the Bears were 2 seasons ago, but it's still a top 10 defense in the NFL. And when you have a top 10 defense like that, your offense doesn't always need to be explosive, but there were a lot of just red flags throughout the season for Buffalo. Josh Allen, he has to step up. Buffalo has the team. They have the people around him in order to really make a deep run in the playoffs. And there's no excuse this season. Tom Brady's gone in New England. Gronk's not there. The Patriots shouldn't be as difficult, and we expect the Jets and the Dolphins to not be as good. The Bills should walk through the AFC East, but there's so much that's still out with this team. If I had to put them, I would put them really kind of on the border between a 500 team and a playoff contention team. Because if Josh Allen is playing like he did in the first half against Houston in the playoff game, man, they're a Super Bowl contender. But if he plays like he did the second half, or like they did even the second half of the season, Buffalo is a sub-500, if a 500 team at best, even with how good that defense was. In 2019, the Bills went 10-6, as we stated. It was the second time they've made the playoffs in 3 years under Sean McDermott here. They started the season out 5-1 and were just absolutely rolling. And then they really limped into the playoffs. They went 5-5 their last 10 games. Very similar to the run-the-table Packers, who were 4-6, just kind of reversed, who were 4-6, but walked into the playoffs with momentum. Buffalo had all the momentum in the world heading through the first half of the season and then kind of fell apart. The game that just stuck in my mind for Buffalo was when they played the Eagles last season in Buffalo. And they got ran all over. And the Eagles didn't at that time have that strong of an offense, let alone a run offense. And the Buffalo defense was just gashed, and it was terrible. But then the other game that sticks in my mind is their Thanksgiving game against Dallas, where they absolutely annihilate the Cowboys. And there's just such inconsistency there that it's difficult to try to judge where this Buffalo team is going to be in 2020, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree that how you see them as like in between a 500 team and a playoff caliber team, because I really can't fault you for that opinion because they could either swing either way and I would be fine with it. And yeah, they're definitely last season showed how inconsistent they could be. First off, thanks for beating the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. That was a
That
nice
was good.
gift.
And they beat them
Yeah.
bad, too.
Yeah. But yeah, I think for the defense, obviously the front line has to get better. Because there's no like premier like defensive tackle in the middle. I mean, they did draft Ed Oliver a year ago, but he's still young and hasn't reached his potential yet. And they're really not known for the edge rushers, so they definitely got to get better there if they don't want to get run over like they did with the Eagles. But yeah, I think they just need to shore up some stuff, and they can definitely play their potential.
Yeah, and I think that it all starts at the quarterback position because, last season I thought the Bills were one of the sleeper teams in terms of winning the offseason. Signing the center from Kansas City with Mitch Morris, I think. I'd have to look
Yeah,
it up.
you're right.
Was a great signing. Signing Cole Beasley from Dallas was a great signing. They got a whole lot of potential out of John Brown in 2019. But there wasn't a clear second step in Josh Allen. The way that really, if you look at all the quarterbacks from that draft, whether it's Baker or it's Allen or it's Sam Darnold, none of them showed a clear second step, like a clear growth from year one to year two, with the exception of Lamar Jackson. And we can't even talk about Josh Rosen because he didn't really even get the opportunity to play that much. So we have to see that step. There has to be that sharp incline in year three here of the Josh Allen experiment. Otherwise, the Bills run the risk of having a playoff caliber team, but not having a playoff caliber quarterback, and not even having a semi-decent quarterback. So when you run that risk there, you unfortunately run the risk of staying a bad organization the way the Bills have been for a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, the Josh Allen, like you've said before, is the crux of how far these guys can go. Um, Obviously, if he doesn't develop, then it's just another bad chapter in the Bills' history. But if he can take that step or even two steps, um, we could be seeing like the second coming of like Jim Kelly, not in the terms of like ability, but just like um, accomplishments that he could do in Buffalo. But I do think that the Bills organization as a whole is trending in the right direction. Um, Brandon Beane so far, I think, is making the right moves, and obviously Sean McDermott is giving the Bills a top 10 defense. So I like the direction that they're headed in, but they obviously need to keep improving if they want to stay in the upper echelon of like teams.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. I think that from a front office aspect, they've done a really good job in terms of signings and stuff. They've appeared at times as like a team that should be desperate, but like aren't desperate, which is good. It seems like they have a lot of control. I like the Sean McDermott hiring. I've always liked the Sean McDermott hiring. I think he's a really underrated coach in a division with one of the best coaches of all time, in Adam Gase. But I'm kidding. You're supposed to laugh at my jokes, dick.
I was taking a drink.
but we're going to come back to Josh Allen because we have to keep coming back to Josh Allen. To me, I feel like if you were to put Joe Flacco, right, on this Buffalo offense right now, I think Buffalo probably wins that playoff game to Houston. If you put, I'm trying to think of like another, semi-par quarterback, but like people on that aspect, you put Jacoby Brissett on this Buffalo team, I think Buffalo maybe wins that playoff game against Houston because the defense is so good and the weapons are there that you just need a quarterback who has the ability. And I don't know if Josh Allen has that. Last season he threw for about 3,100 yards, so less than 200 yards a game. He threw for 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and he ran for 9 more touchdowns. So the dude didn't even average 2 total touchdowns a game. Like, his quarterback stats look like what you would see out of like most high schoolers right now. Less than 200 yards a game and 1.25 touchdowns a game. So he has to take that step. He doesn't have to go 35 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He doesn't even have to lower the interception number. 9 interceptions is an okay number for quarterbacks. It's just there has to be consistency across the board, and he can't always just rely on running the ball. He had half as many rushing touchdowns as he did passing touchdowns. And if he had thrown 40 touchdowns, that'd be a great statistic to have. But he didn't. He threw 20. And he really only threw it to the 2 wide receivers he had because there's not a lot of growth there as well. Now, we'll get to the Stephon Diggs pickup, and hopefully that can help. But Buffalo is an interesting team. Just to break down some stats, last season, Josh Allen, 3,089 yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 9 rushing touchdowns. Devin Singletary, 775 yards, averaged 5.1 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. There are 2 premier wide receivers. John Brown had 72 catches for 1,060 yards and 6 touchdowns. Cole Beasley, 67 catches, 778 yards and 6 touchdowns. So if we just look at it just right there, right, between Brown and Beasley, they put up about 1,800 of the 3,100 yards Josh Allen threw to and 12 of his 20 touchdowns. So it's either there's nobody else there or he's a 1-read, 2-read tops quarterback,
Yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of both. The main receivers that I can think of that have contributed to the Bills are, Beasley, Brown, and then the kid from Alabama, Robert Foster. It seems like he's a really underrated guy for them. But yeah, I definitely think that Josh Allen is kind of in a similar situation to Lamar Jackson, as their ceiling is only going to be as high as how much they improve their passing ability, because they're kind of run first quarterbacks, and they both need to be better passers if they want to be successful NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I agree. And Josh Allen has a cannon of an arm. Like, he has a huge arm. He hasn't shown any touch on his passes, Like, we can look at a Lamar Jackson throw and go, wow, he threaded the needle right there. And there was a few of them, right? Like the Monday night game against against the Rams, when he sidearms the throw in between like 2 defensive linemen for a touchdown. That you're like, wow, he did not do that year 1. He did that year 2 because of coaching and development on his part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen has never had a throw like that, ever. Like, if you look at his best games, they're when he's running the ball and when he's playing teams like Dallas who have no form of a pass rush, and he can afford to just kind of sit there and dilly-dally for as long as he wants until somebody gets open. So Josh Allen, with the arm that he has like a Patrick Mahomes level arm in terms of strength, but he doesn't have the touch that's needed in order to really succeed as a quarterback. And that's what he has to develop. And hopefully that's what he's doing. And I like Josh Allen as a person. I like him as a quarterback. He's fun to watch. But he has to take that next step. Otherwise, Buffalo is going to live in this 8-8 to 10-6 range for a really long time and never live up to its potential. One guy I do kind of want to talk about with the season that he had, now that Frank Gore is gone, I'm interested to see what Devin Singletary does year two here. What are your thoughts, Mitch?
Yeah, I liked Devin Singletary. He's a really promising kid. I liked what he did in college. With Gore gone, he's definitely going to get some more snaps. But I'm trying to think. Didn't the Bills sign another veteran running back, right?
I don't remember. I don't have them signing one. Maybe they did. They drafted Zach Moss out of Utah. Um, but I like Singletary. I like him in his ability as a pure runner. As we stated, 5.1 yards per carry. That's really good. Um, but the thing that I really like about him is his potential in pass catching, and being that outlet for Josh Allen. I really like Devin Singletary. So now let's break down their 2020 offseason. Obviously, the biggest thing that happened with the Bills was the Stephon Diggs trade. They traded with Minnesota. They got Stephon Diggs and a fourth-round pick for 2020 first, fifth, and sixth, and a 2021 fourth-round pick. Mitch, who won that trade, Buffalo or Minnesota? Knowing
Um,
that Minnesota drafted Justin Jefferson with that first-round pick, you know.
yeah, I mean, obviously when it comes to trades, the old saying is whoever got the better player won the trade. I definitely think that Stephon Diggs is going to be a huge addition for them. Um, but on the other hand, you could look at Minnesota and say they won it just because of the amount of picks they got, and they got Justin Jefferson. But with an offseason like this, he's not going to have that chance to develop, so it could like mess him up. But I think as of right now, I think the Bills definitely won with Stephon Diggs because he's a true number one receiver, which the Bills have needed for a while. And I definitely think he could get them over the hump.
Yeah, I agree. As we were just bashing Josh Allen's ability as a quarterback, Stephon Diggs is a massive pickup. Um, the area where we want to see growth is if Stephon Diggs shows up and Josh Allen still throws for 20 touchdowns, then there's an issue with Josh Allen, right? Because now there's no more excuses. His first season, you're like, okay, they didn't have a wide receiver. So John Brown shows up, balls out. Cole Beasley shows up, balls out. But there's still issues. So now you're like, okay, well, they don't have a premier wide receiver. So they go and they give the farm away in order to get one. And now if there's no growth, then it's a quarterback problem. If this were any other team, like if it was, we'll say Carolina who traded for Stephon Diggs, and this was Teddy Bridgewater throwing to him, it's Carolina hands down wins that trade. But because it's an unproven quarterback with this wide receiver, I say Minnesota won it, and I say Minnesota won it for a few reasons. A, you get a wide receiver who you think is going to be just as good in Justin Jefferson on a cheaper contract with a fifth-year option. Plus, you get the massive toxicity that Stephon Diggs brought to the Minnesota locker room out of your locker room. Every time the Vikings lost a game, all you heard was Stephon Diggs complaining that he never got thrown the ball or that Kirk Cousins was trash. And then they win a playoff game, and he's like, oh, no, man, I love this guy. He's great. And then they lose a playoff game, and he starts chirping again. And I think that getting that toxicity out of Mike Zimmer's locker room, even regardless of just playing ability, was the best thing for the Vikings.
I don't know. I do agree with Diggs. Kirk Cousins is trash. But yeah, I get it.
I agree that he's trash, but there's no room for that in a locker room.
But yeah, definitely. I didn't really hear that kind of stuff. But if what you're saying is true, then yeah, even though Stephon Diggs is all world as a wide receiver, the first and foremost is the overall health of the locker room because it's so crucial to a successful team. So I guess we'll see if removing Stephon Diggs from the Minnesota Vikings organization is going to help them at all.
Yeah, I remember after their loss to Chicago, I think it was week 3, and he was just chirping, and there were issues. And Kirk Cousins played it up like a man, and he said, hey, I got to play better, and he did, and stuff like that. And then, you know, in the offseason when he spotted doing a workout in an Arizona Cardinals shirt, and fans are like, oh my God, he's getting traded to the Cardinals. He was like, no, it's just a workout shirt, but hold on, something's happening. So like he knew he was behind all of this. You know, hopefully Buffalo is a good landing spot for him. But to break down some of their other offseason acquisitions, they signed Mario Addison, a defensive end from Carolina, who had 9.5 sacks in 2019. They signed defensive tackle Vernon Butler from Carolina, who had 6 sacks last year. They signed D tackle DN Quentin Jefferson from Seattle, who had 3.5 sacks in 2019, and Josh Norman from the Redskins, the worst corner to ever make a Pro Bowl. 40 tackles, 1 sack, 1 interception. So you can see they invested heavily on their defensive line because they knew they didn't have a pass rush. They knew they had great pass coverage, you know, but they didn't have a pass rush. So what do you think of some of those acquisitions they made, Mitch?
When you're looking at the list of acquisitions they made, obviously it's Panther heavy. I mean, you know, they got Norman, they got Addison, they got Daryl Williams, they got AJ Klein, who played for the Panthers, and then obviously Vernon Butler. So Sean McDermott's definitely milking that connection. I definitely think that Mario Addison can kind of take that that Lorenzo Alexander kind of role, that like older pass rusher. I know that Daryl Williams is a talented offensive lineman who hasn't really gotten to show it just because of injury. So if he can stay healthy, I think he can help improve that offensive line. And then, you know, Josh Norman, he balled out in Carolina, and then
For one season.
yeah, but and then he got traded to the Redskins. So hopefully Sean McDermott can, you know, find that Josh Norman who kind of burst out onto the scene, because then that makes that secondary even scarier. And then I think that, you know, AJ Klein, Vernon Butler, Jefferson, and Tyler Makovich is definitely solid depth for this team.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like they went with depth that could give production, you know,
Exactly.
as opposed to you see some teams who run into some issues with cap space, or you see some teams who have good players and a good team, and when it comes to depth, they just try to bring in bodies, you know. And it seemed like this is where, you know, a huge applause to the Buffalo Bills because they brought in depth that not only could produce. I mean, just in those between Jefferson, Butler, and Addison, that's, you know, 19 sacks right there, you know, um, just between those 3 guys in 2019. So they brought in depth that has production, but depth that also has like growth ability, you know, and can continue to grow.
Yeah, and then a definitely underrated thing is, you know, all these guys are experienced,
Yeah.
and I think that's a huge plus to get, you know, that kind of veteran depth. Because if you look at a team like the Green Bay Packers, where in recent years where we had injury, and then we have these like rookies, second year, third players come in, and it just messes everything up because, you know, they're young, they don't know it all yet, they're not there yet, so
Yeah.
you know they can't. I don't know. Most of them can't handle it yet, so it hurts your team. So you definitely need to kind of find that balance where it's more veteran depth over young guys.
Yeah, you know, you need that veteran leadership. I think Green Bay is a really good example because it was, you know, the leadership like defensively was Clay Matthews and Mike Daniels and Tremont Williams, right? Well,
Yeah.
Clay Matthews was gone last season. Mike Daniels was gone last season, and Tremont Williams is gone this season. So you definitely need that veteran leadership in order to help the young guys. But there also has to be a point where you got to give the young guys the reins, and you got to tell them it's time for you to produce. You know, you can only keep older guys on your team for sentimental value for so long. Um, but I love what the Bills did this offseason. Some of their key losses, they lost Shaq Lawson, edge rusher. He went to Miami. They lost Lorenzo Alexander, you know, longtime linebacker for them. Kevin Johnson went to Cleveland, and Jordan Phillips, a D tackle. Jordan Phillips went to Arizona. So definitely some losses, but I don't feel like anybody who's going to destroy them in their ability to play. And I feel like they've replaced the value of those guys pretty strongly.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, Shaq Lawson, to me, he's a bust who had one good year with them, so that's not really a loss. Lorenzo Alexander, was a solid guy who kind of had like um, a career renaissance at the late stages of his career. So,
Yeah.
that's not much of a loss. And Jordan Phillips was, solid. Kevin Johnson, was okay. And then, Frank Gore was, Frank Gore is good, but, it's not the Frank Gore, the San Francisco 49ers. So I definitely think that,
Yeah.
there's maybe some bigger names, but they didn't lose that much.
No, I agree, and I think if you want to see Devin Singletary take that next step, that Frank Gore, couldn't be there, and that's nothing against Frank, but it's like if you're going to bring in Frank Gore, you're going to play Frank Gore, and if you feel like Singletary can maybe give you a little bit more production, then hey, you got to play him. So now jumping into their draft here, they definitely had an interesting draft. Remember, they don't have a first round pick, so they still ended up with 7 picks in total. They didn't have a first, but they ended up with 2 sixths. So breaking down their draft, second round, 54th overall pick, they drafted AJ Epinesa, defensive end out of Iowa. He had 11 and a half sacks in 2019. I love the pick of Epinesa. As a Wisconsin fan, we watched Epinesa for a long time, whether he was playing us or Minnesota or whoever. The dude is an absolute wrecking machine. I think he's got good length. I think he's got good ability. He's a smart player. I really hope he can develop in Buffalo the way that he developed at Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, the kid has everything going for him. He was a legacy pick at Iowa. He was a 5-star recruit, I believe. And I think that, you know, as you said, he was a dominant player at Iowa, but obviously when it came time to, like the combine and testing and all that kind of stuff, he fell down some boards.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he was there where he is. So hopefully, when you draft a guy like that, you're getting the guy that you saw at Iowa, and not, the guy who, you know, is, how do I want to say this? Who has a lot of concerns that you're not sure that it's going to translate.
Yeah, I agree. This could end up a great pick. This could end up Shaq Lawson part two. You know, um, what you got to remember was that when before the combine and stuff, Epinesa was like he was like a top 25 pick. You know, and then after the combine and everything, you saw fellow Big Ten defensive end like Yetur Gross Matos end up kind of hopscotching him as well as some other guys, and he fell down the draft board progressively. I think Buffalo has, I think they got first round potential in the mid second round, but is he going to live up to that potential? That's the question there. Moving on to their third round pick, this is my favorite pick of them overall. Zach Moss, running back out of Utah. He had 1,416 rushing yards and 15 rushing touchdowns last season for the Utes. I watched quite a bit of Utah football. I watched their Pac-12 championship game against Oregon. I watched some of their games throughout the season, and every time I've watched Zach Moss over the last 3 seasons at Utah, I've loved what I saw. I love Zach Moss. I think he's a fluid runner. I think he offers so much speed and potential, and I think if he can produce the same way, I think a combination of Devin Singletary and Zach Moss in Buffalo makes for a really dangerous combination.
Yeah, Zach Moss, is a pretty good player. He was on a really uh, underappreciated Utah team. I don't think a lot of people knew like how good Utah really was last season, just because of especially on the defensive end with all the players that they had and who got drafted, and then um, their quarterback running back combination on offense.
Yeah.
I know that you said that he has great speed, but he
Yeah.
didn't test that well at the combine. So, hopefully that's not an indication that he doesn't have the speed, and hopefully he has the speed that we've seen on game tape. So I think that's definitely a thing to be monitoring, but I definitely think he's going to be a nice 1-2 punch with Singletary.
Yeah, and I guess you're right. Speed may not be the best word. I think he has great agility.
There we go.
Great first couple of steps when he hits the hole. It's very as a Wisconsin fan, I'm going to relate it to who I know. So it's very Melvin Gordon-esque, like when he was at Wisconsin, in just his ability to hit that hole so well and make that one or two cut that's needed to get into the open space. That's what I love about the guy. Fourth round pick, they went Gabriel Davis, wide receiver out of UCF, 72 catches, about 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. Good wide receiver depth. They obviously need that. They're hoping they're going to get, some diamonds in the rough here. Fifth round pick was interesting, and you and me kind of talked about it when it happened. They went Jake Fromm, quarterback out of Georgia, about 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions last year. The dude's a winner, just flat out. Like, he won at Georgia. Obviously, they didn't win a national championship or stuff like that, but he won at Georgia. And I like Jake Fromm. I liked him since he was on that QB1 show on Netflix, which I highly suggest watching. But I like Jake Fromm. I don't think he's an NFL caliber quarterback, but I think he's a Chase Daniel backup for a couple of seasons and is serviceable if something happens type guy.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. The guy's been a winner day one since he stepped on Georgia. I mean, he beat out Jacob Eason to the point where Eason transferred to Washington. He's been really successful at Georgia. He even took them to national championship, even though Tua had the, dash his hopes and all that. I definitely think it was an interesting pick because Jake Fromm is definitely like the polar opposite from what Josh Allen is. And I think like Fromm to me was kind of the mold of like what like the Patriots wanted in a quarterback. So
Yeah.
it's definitely, like you said, it's an interesting pick, and I'm curious to see like if he's just a backup for them in like a Chase Daniel role, or if Josh Allen doesn't take that step forward, they kind of think like, let's see, maybe Jake Fromm is our going to be our guy now.
I agree with you saying that he's really the polar opposite of Josh Allen because Jake Fromm his accuracy at times is absolutely deadly, but he doesn't have good arm strength. And that's what really killed him. If he had Jacob Eason's arm strength or he had Josh Allen's arm strength, Jake Fromm would probably be a top 10 pick because if you watch his game tape, understanding that especially last season, Georgia had nobody at wide receiver and they didn't really have the offense or the defense that they normally did. So many people, like, I remember watching stuff on Jake Fromm, and I follow Georgia football very closely. So many people only focused on the LSU game, the SEC championship game. Nobody focused on what he did the rest of the season. That game he played against Notre Dame was one of the best football games I've ever watched in my life. His back shoulder throw into the end zone to basically win that game, at the Hedges in Georgia, was one of the best throws. It was an Aaron Rodgers-esque throw, and he never got credit for it. And that's such a shame. Listening to guys at Georgia, he shows up, starts barking orders, but he has the trust of his teammates. Like, his teammates immediately know, oh, that guy's a winner. And that's what made, when he took the job from Jacob Eason, so huge. Because once he took that job, he wasn't going to give it back. And he showed that there was no reason for him to give it back. What I think he brings to Buffalo is that he can help Josh Allen with his accuracy and with his reads. Jake Fromm, and it's very well documented, he's a film junkie. And I think Josh Allen needs to learn that. And he needs to understand that playing quarterback isn't so much about, flying by the seat of your pants as much as understanding the concepts that the defense is going to give you. So I hope that they can end up learning from each other. I think it's a good pick, honestly. But moving on here, 6th round pick, they draft kicker Tyler Bass from Georgia Southern, 36 to 36 on extra points, 20 to 28 from field goals. I have no opinion. Anytime you draft a kicker, I think it's a wasted pick. So I have no opinion on that pick. Mitch, you have any?
Don't watch Georgia Southern football, so I couldn't tell you.
There we go. And even if I did, I probably wouldn't be paying attention to the kicker. Sixth round pick, wide receiver Isaiah Hodgins, Oregon State, 86 catches, 1,171 yards, 13 touchdowns. Again, to me, really similar to the Gabriel Davis pick. I think they went for depth at wide receiver. They're hoping to try to find some guys who maybe, play a year or two on the practice squad and can show up. And then their final pick, seventh round pick, corner Dane Jackson from Pitt, 43 tackles and an interception last year. No real opinion, didn't get to watch much Pitt football, but that's their draft. Mitch, overall, how would you grade their draft? Let's go in terms of like production now, go like A through F, and then let's go with like possible production. Like if everybody just balls out, right?
Yeah, so for production now, I would say that it's probably a C, just because the only guys that I see producing producing right away is probably their first two picks. I think that Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins are definitely going to be depth guys, and so I don't think they're going to get any meaningful snaps. Obviously, Fromm's not going to be playing any games barring injury. Tyler Bass, if he wins the competition for kicker, unless the Bills don't have a kicker right now. So
I believe they still have Hauschka. Get out.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, if Bass is able to beat Hauschka, obviously he contributes, but otherwise, he loses and gets cut. So there's that. And then, Jackson, just another depth guy.
Yeah, honestly, I think with their first pick, the Bills addressed a need, which was edge rusher and Epinesa. And I think every other pick was really similar to their offseason signings, which is they went for depth who could give them production if everything works out really well. We saw last season Josh Allen did not play the whole season. He was hurt, in a couple different games, including against New England earlier in the season. And Matt Barkley had to step in, and that didn't work out super well. So Fromm definitely brings depth, and I think he brings some potential there. I love their first two picks. I love Epinesa. I love Zach Moss. I think they picked really well for the limited amount of draft picks that they had. So overall, if I'm going to talk about production now, I'll probably give it a C plus if everything works out. Possible production, man, there's scary players on there. If Zach Moss can ball out the way that he did at Utah and Epinesa can put up 10 plus sacks a season, the Bills look a lot scarier. So with that being said, let's move on to the Buffalo schedule for 2020 here. Now, Buffalo walks into the 2020 season having to play the sixth toughest schedule in the NFL. So we'll see how they work with that. Keep in mind one interesting thing last season. The Buffalo Bills only had one win against a team that was above 500 to finish the season, and that was the Tennessee Titans. So not very good against 500 or better teams in the NFL. So, above 500. I think they beat like one or two 8-8 teams. Like they beat the Cowboys who finished 8-8 or whatever. So definitely interesting. But let's break it down. They kick the season off same way they did last season against the Jets. It's a home game against the Jets. I have them winning that game. I think they're just going to overwhelm the Jets. I think their defense stacks up well against the few weapons the Jets have. I'm going to give that win to Buffalo.
Yeah, I think this is an easy win for Buffalo. The Jets are still, to me, in like a rebuilding phase. They don't have their foundation set yet outside of Sam Darnold. And who knows if Sam Darnold's the answer at quarterback for them, because I don't know. I've yet to see a franchise guy. And this is an Adam Gase team, and Adam Gase hasn't been that great as a head coach, so Buffalo wins.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think when we get to the Jets, we're going to be having a lot of the same conversations about Sam Darnold as we had in this episode about Josh Allen. So it's definitely going to be interesting. So both agree with the win there. Then they go week 2. They travel down to Miami to play the Dolphins. I have them winning that game as well. With the inconsistencies that we're kind of expecting from Miami, I don't know how they're going to stack up, whether it's Fitzpatrick at quarterback or Tua at quarterback. We don't really know. The Miami defense definitely improved, but I have Buffalo winning that game.
Yeah, another win for Buffalo. I definitely think that the Bills defense is going to neutralize whatever offense they put together. And the Dolphins defense, I think, outside of their cornerbacks, is still trying to improve and be put together. So I definitely think, with the Bills being a more complete team, they'll win.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Week 3, they host the Los Angeles Rams. This is going to be an interesting game. When we get to the Rams, I think we're both going to talk about how we don't really know what to expect out of them in 2020. I think that with so many massive question marks in terms of the Rams offense, even though their defense is probably still going to be pretty good, I'm going to give my hat to Buffalo in that game. But it does seem like a catch game that Buffalo could possibly drop just for really no reason,
Yeah, I think the Bills are going to win. The Rams are a descending team. I mean, the only good players that they have left are, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. They just keep losing their key guys, and that offensive line is just horrendous. And I think that Rams fans are kind of feeling like Packer fans when the Packers didn't pick a wide receiver and the Rams really didn't try to get a good offensive lineman. So
yeah, but I think
yeah,
the difference is like one team went 13-3 and one team, absolutely didn't even make the playoffs last year. But no, I mean, I agree, and we'll break it down when we get to the Rams. They're so inconsistent. We don't really know. Are we going to get the Rams from 2 seasons ago? Or are we going to get the Rams that barely beat the Browns? What Rams are we going to get, So we both agree that they're going to start 3-0. Then we move on to week 4. They go to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. I have them beating the Raiders because I just don't – I think the Bills are just a superior team. I think offensively and defensively, I have them walking into Las Vegas and beating John Gruden and the Raiders.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm with you. The Bills are going to beat the Raiders. I've said it before, the Raiders offense to me right now is just Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller. And I got to see how Ruggs plays to say that they can be a better offense. So, and then their defense has some holes on it that I need to see that they improve from. So the Bills beat them because they're a better team.
Yeah, and the Raiders had some key losses. They're going to get, first-round pick Jonathan Abram back from injury. He was gone, I think, all.
I like him.
I like him a lot too, and we'll break it down. When we get to the Raiders, their draft was, iffy. It seems like it seems like John Gruden is just drafting everybody who played at Clemson or Alabama in the last 4 seasons.
I feel like it's pedigree over production.
Yeah, so we'll break it down. So we both have them starting 4-0. Then they move on week 5 at Tennessee. I have them losing this game. I think Tennessee stacks up really well against Buffalo. Especially with Derrick Henry. We saw how bad the Bills were against the run game last season. I don't know if they've improved that enough. I think Derrick Henry runs all over him. I have a win going to Tennessee.
I'm going to disagree. I think I'm putting my hope in that Josh Allen develops, and this is going to be his signature win of the season by beating the Tennessee Titans. I think that the Bills offense stacks up well against the Titans defense because their secondary outside of the safety position really isn't that impressive to me. And I think that Stephon Diggs, John Brown, and Cole Beasley could have their way with them. And with Jurrell Casey leaving that defensive line, it's gotten worse because the only defensive linemen are, especially in the middle, that I can think of is their last year pick in Jeffrey Simmons, who only played a little bit last year. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops. But I think that Singletary and Moss can get some production out of it, and I think that the Bills defense can limit what the Titans want to do.
See, and that's where I'm going to disagree because I think that the Titans defense is good enough to maybe not stop all their weapons, but to stop Josh Allen. Maybe this is the game where Josh Allen balls out and throws 5 touchdowns. Who knows? But I'm not going to bet on it because we haven't seen that from him. If he throws 5 touchdowns, it's probably because he's thrown 4 interceptions. So this is where, it just seems like a game that's meant for the Bills to lose. Moving on, week 6, they host the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Kansas City maybe defensively is going to give up some points, and it could be a little bit of a shootout. But I think offensively, Kansas City is going to be able to have their way with the Bills. I give this to Kansas City.
Yeah, this for me, this is going to be the Bills' first loss. I don't think that they can match up for every weapon that the Kansas City Chiefs have, especially with the Chiefs drafting Clyde Hilaire-Edwards, who just adds another dimension that you have to worry about on their offense.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that the Bills could have their way with the Chiefs defense that could keep them in the game. So, but I definitely think that the Chiefs will win.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that with a lot of these games, when I was looking at them and breaking them down, I wasn't. I was trying my hardest not to break them down, believing that Josh Allen is not going to take a step, but I have to because we haven't seen that. So I had to break these games down, thinking that Josh Allen is going to throw for less than 200 yards and maybe a touchdown and a half a game, right? So that's where when we talk about just pure production, if that's what the Bills are bringing versus Pat Mahomes, I don't know if the Bills stand a chance. Week 7 they go to the Jets just because it's the AFC East. I'm going to give the win to the Jets there. I think that seems like the type of game that the Bills maybe have a hiccup on. In my mind, I have them right now at 4-3, including at that point losers of 3 straight. I think this is a team that kind of finds its way into a funk. But I have the Jets winning that game.
I have the Bills winning for all the same reasons that I said when they beat them week 1.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So then week 8, they host the New England Patriots. I have them winning that game. I think this might finally be the year that they beat the Patriots at home.
Yeah, I'm in the same thought with you. I think that the Bills are going to beat the Patriots. But to me, the Bills Patriots series is going to be split, and the Bills aren't going to beat them twice.
I agree, and we'll get to that here in the Week 16 matchup. So then halfway through the season, I have the Bills at 5-3. You have them at 7-1. So you have them at what would be the upper echelon, of the NFL there, and I have them kind of floating in that top 6 to top 12 tier at 5-3.
Yeah.
So definitely interesting. We'll see how they do in the back half. Week 9, they host the Seattle Seahawks. This to me is going to kind of work, I think, similar to their game against Philadelphia. I think Seattle with Russell Wilson, even though the weapons might not be there entirely, I think they stack up well against the Bills. I think the Seahawks defense stacks up well against Josh Allen. I think they're going to hit him with some stuff he's never seen before. I give a win to Seattle.
Yeah, for me, this is a win for Seattle. I'm not going to doubt Seattle, even though it looks like they might take a step back this year because they still have Russell Wilson. Pete Carroll's still their coach. I think that Russell Wilson has some nice wide receivers in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And then I think the defense does have some nice players, but they're going to need to come together and be cohesive. But I definitely think that Seattle can beat the Bills.
Yeah, I agree. So then week 10, they go to Arizona. When we broke down the Cardinal schedule, I had them beating the Cardinals. I believe you did too, Mitch, correct?
Yes, I have the Bills beating the Cardinals.
Yeah, and go back, listen to the Arizona episode. We break it down a little bit, but I think that the Bills just are going to bring too much weaponry offensively, even if we get some inconsistent quarterback play against the Cardinals. So I give my hat to the Bills in that game, heading into their bye week. So then coming out of their bye week, they host the Los Angeles Chargers. Because this is going to be week 12, we don't know who's going to be starting at quarterback for the Chargers. Let alone what the Chargers are going to look like at all. I say Buffalo wins coming out of the bye week.
Yeah, I have the Bills beating the Chargers. Even though the Chargers offensively and defensively look like they could beat the Bills, it just comes down to that quarterback position. Because if it's Herbert starting, I don't think that he can beat the Buffalo Bills. Where he is at in his career. And then Tyrod Taylor, I know that you like him. I'm not really a fan of him just because he's had like 1 or 2 good years as a starting quarterback. So I don't think that either quarterback can beat the Bills. So that's the deciding factor for me.
I agree. I agree. So week 13, they go to the Bay to tackle the San Francisco 49ers. I think similar to the game where the Eagles ran all over them, I think the Niners are going to run all over them the same way that the Niners did to Green Bay in the NFC Championship game. I have the Niners winning that game.
Yeah, I definitely think that the Niners are going to win. And from the last dance, he's going to drop 60 on them.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, so then week 14, they host the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I'm not mistaken, they beat the Steelers last season. I have them beating the Steelers again. I think the Steelers have so many questions in terms of their weaponry on offense that even if it's Big Ben who ends up playing quarterback, I think the Bills' defense stacks up really well. So I'm gonna give my hat to the Bills there and have them beating the Steelers.
Yeah, I have the Bills beating the Steelers. The Steelers' defense is definitely top 10, and I don't think a lot of people really noticed that last year. But the big question is their offense. I mean, which Big Ben is coming back? Is James Conner going to take a step in development? Is someone outside of Juju Smith-Schuster going to step up? And which Eric Ebron are we getting at tight end? So I think there's too many question marks for me to seriously consider them beating the Bills. So, yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. There's too many question marks with Pittsburgh, but I feel like we kind of say that every season. Waffles, go away. So then week 14, week 15, they go to Denver to play the Broncos. This to me is a trap game for Buffalo. This to me is a game where I think on paper, if we get the Drew Lock that we got towards the end of the season, the Broncos stack up really well against the Bills, both offensively and defensively. I have them losing to Denver at Denver.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is a classic trap game that I think the Bills are going to fall into. The Broncos defense has always been great throughout the years, and this year's no different. And, with the offense or with the offseason moves they made to this offense, it's going to be, trending in that direction to when Peyton Manning took over as quarterback. But it all depends on Locke, and I think that Locke can develop into a quality starting quarterback at this point in the season. So I definitely think that the Broncos are going to beat the Bills.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, and I think this is going to be a little bit of a litmus test for Josh Allen because, Drew Lock is a year younger than him in the league. A lot of people didn't have Drew Lock as being as talented as Josh Allen was, and I think this could be the game where, Buffalo fans and the organization might realize that maybe they don't have their guy at quarterback. So then week 16, they go to New England. We talked about it a little bit before. I don't have them sweeping the Patriots. I think this is the game that the Patriots are going to win in New England. I like the Patriots at home. I like Bill Belichick at home. He doesn't lose to teams twice. I give it to New England.
Yeah, I'm the same with you. As I said before, that, they're going to split the series. I think the Patriots are going to win. They're at home, and I'm not going to be disrespectful to Bill Belichick and what he's accomplished in New England to think that the Bills can beat him twice. So Patriots win.
Yeah, no, agreed. And then week 17, they close the season out. Home game against Miami. Same reason I haven't beaten them week 2. I haven't beaten them week 17. We don't know what Miami team we're going to get. Maybe we're going to get the Miami team that ended the season against New England last year. Who knows? But I think Buffalo stacks up well. I think this is the game that kind of locks the AFC East for them. So, yeah, I have Buffalo winning.
Yeah, me too. I think the Bills are a superior team at this point in time. And, I think this win locks them up to finally dethroning the Patriots of being the division winner.
Yeah, I agree. So it is interesting. We both have Buffalo winning the AFC East, but I have them winning it at 9-7, and you have them at 11-5. Now, I don't know. We don't know Mitch's playoff bracket here like that. Obviously, with my pick at 9-7, I have them as the 4th seed. limping in, so they would get a home playoff game for the first time in a long time. Keeping in mind that the Bills have not won a playoff game since 1995 and have gone 0-5 in their appearances since then. Mitch, you have them at 11-5. Without spoiling anything, where do you have them in terms of seeding? I would think somewhere along the lines of like a 3 seed, right?
According to my seeding, the Bills would be a 4th seed.
They'd be a 4th seed. Okay, so we both have them at the 4th seed, at the lowest of the division winners. So that does kind of beg the question: is a 9-7 or even an 11-5 record clear growth for the Bills? If we look at who kind of we have them beating, who we have them losing to, we don't have them beating many teams who are expected to be above 500 again. You know, you have them beating Tennessee. I think Tennessee is going to be above 500. I don't have them beating Tennessee. Neither of us have them beating Seattle. Neither of us have them beating Arizona, who I think we had at 500 or better. Neither of us have them beating San Francisco. They beat Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh will probably finish like 9-7 or something. We'll break it down, but not many teams above 500. So do you think that even your 11-5 season, do you think that's a successful season for them?
Yeah, if it plays out the way that I think it's going to be and it's enough for them to win the division, I definitely think that you take that as a success, especially from the dominance that the Patriots have had on the division. And even if they go 9-7, like you said, for how the playoffs are formatted this year, it's definitely good enough to get them to the playoffs. So, I think another chance to be in the playoffs is definitely a success. It just all depends on what you define as success for your team.
Yeah, I agree. If you're Buffalo fans, I don't know too many of them, but obviously you're probably content with winning the AFC East. But I think I have the Bills going to the playoffs and getting knocked out in the first round. We're not going to break down who I have them getting knocked out to. We'll get that when we finish all these episodes. But I just, at that point, if you're Sean McDermott, yeah, you've led your team to the playoffs 3 times, but you haven't won a playoff game. I don't know the consistency we're going to get from Josh Allen. My prediction is he's going to throw about 25 touchdowns, and I'd say over/under probably about 10 interceptions. So I think there's going to be some growth, but I don't know if there's going to be enough there for the Bills to, I don't know if the Bills can strongly consider him coming up to what would be his 4th season. What would be after the season. This is only his 3rd, but after the season, this 2020 season is over. It's at his 4th. And then you got to start talking about, are you using your 5th-year option on him? And we've seen the Bears have declined to pick up the 5th-year option on Trubisky. And I think that unless there's clear growth in the next 2 seasons from Allen, he really runs the risk of the same thing happening to him,
Yeah, I think this is the year that's going to determine whether he gets picked up or not. Because if you've seen like no clear growth in 3 years, I mean, you just gotta let the 4-year contract run out and try again. But I don't know. I think Josh Allen's going to throw for 1,000 touchdowns and -10 interceptions.
Yeah. You think the other team is going to throw interceptions to him? Smart.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys listening. Mitch, who do we have next? Carolina, right?
Yep. Our next 2 episodes are the Carolina Panthers and that team in Chicago. I don't know.
The Bears. So yeah, we have the Bears going 0-25, right?
Yeah.
Cool. No, we're going to try not to be such homers with the Bears. We're going to be realists, but we are Packer fans, so we'll see how it goes. Fault us, whatever. But before we even get to the Bears, we're going to break down the Carolina Panthers, a really quite an enigma of a team, I think. I think it's going to be an interesting episode as to where we have them. So I appreciate everybody listening. If you're Buffalo fans or if you're fans of the Ravens, Falcons, or Cardinals, we did some episodes on them already. And if you're a Panthers fan or a Bears fan, hey, we got episodes coming up. So tune in, you guys. We're going to drop this one here. We're going to record the next one on, I think Wednesday is the day that we're going to record it. So we'll probably have it uploaded to you guys on, either Wednesday night or Thursday, barring anything. Please follow us on Facebook and on Instagram Facebook and Twitter. Reach us through email, questions, comments. We're at fourthstringsp@gmail.com. That's FOURTH stringsp@gmail.com. I have the email in the show notes there. So just let us know what you guys think. We appreciate everybody listening. Everybody have a safe and fun Memorial Day weekend. Mitch, you got any closing thoughts?
Yeah, a little message for the Bears and Panthers fans who know what their episode's coming up. Now that you've seen, the format of our show and what we talk about and how it goes, please feel free to send us stuff like if you want us to cover a certain player or a certain topic that's relevant to what we kind of talk about. I've said it before, you know your team better than us. So, send us anything that you think will improve the segment.
Yeah, we definitely agree. And even if you're watching these kind of in the future and everything, if you're a Cardinals fan or a Falcons fan or a Ravens fan or any team that we cover, we are always willing to go back to topics. We do have some episodes planned here where we're going to take some breaks from breaking down schedules. I know we want to talk about The Last Dance. We want to talk about the possibility of the NBA returning. We want to break down the possibility of the MLB returning. There's lots of things we want to talk about. So we're not just going to do football for the next 30 plus weeks. We got a bunch of sports we're going to cover, a bunch of little segments. We're probably going to drop some mini episodes and stuff. So, we appreciate everybody listening and everybody have a fun and safe weekend. Okay. Bye, guys.